LSU bludgeons Arkansas and in the process announces themselves as real college football playoff contenders. It's Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well, so please subscribe. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So with LSU's win over Arkansas, what is their path to the playoff? With Bama losing and Georgia beating Texas, some of that gains a little more clarity, some of it decidedly more murky. We'll delve into that. I have two big takeaways from LSU's win as well that I want to talk about. But let's start, though, with the game itself. First and foremost, LSU deserves a tremendous amount of credit because it would have been so easy to go to Northwest Arkansas, to play a team that views you as its biggest rival, a team that always gets up to play you, a team that's coming off their bye and before their open date upset Tennessee on the very field that you were going to be playing on. Meanwhile, LSU is coming off of a marquee win where your fans storm the field. There's an old handicapping angle where it's a field storm fade. Whenever a team wins a game, their fans storm the field. The next week, you bet against them because it's just a natural emotional letdown. That's very real. And we've seen it. Alabama had a gigantic win against Georgia. The next week, they lost at Vanderbilt. We see it all the time in college football in particular, where teams have letdown spots. And this was a quintessential letdown spot for LSU. The situation favored Arkansas so much. LSU's a better team, but just like a week ago, Ole Miss, better roster than LSU. They were favored and were right to be. And they had opportunities, but boy, they left the door open. And LSU took advantage, kicked that door in, ended up winning the game. That was reversed this week, where the situation favored a rested Arkansas team coming off a bye, an LSU team in a letdown spot. But Arkansas won the toss, deferred. LSU took the ball and went right down the field and scored a touchdown on that opening drive. They even overcame taking a touchdown off the board. Mason Taylor's touchdown came off the board because of OPI, and then you had a false start on Mason Taylor. So you had 2nd and 22. No worries. Caden Durham, 22-yard touchdown run, and Tigers lead 7-0. It was so imperative to start fast because oftentimes when you're facing a team that is trying to pull an upset, belief is so important. Can they find a way to keep themselves in the ballgame? Now, they did, and we'll talk about that in a second. But the LSU's defense showed up in a big way, especially in that first half, really throughout the game. But Arkansas's first possession, they had a 3rd and 8. Major Burns comes up with a huge spot as a tackle as Taylor Green is scrambling. Stops him short. They attempt a 40-yard field goal. No good. How easy it would have been if Major Burns doesn't make that tackle, if he's out of position, which we've seen from this defense over the last year and a half. But now, my goodness, are they dramatically improving. Tigers would get the ball. They put together a really nice drive. They would stall out. This is where the penalties became an issue. You had a false start on the center. You had a false start on Bo Bordelon, who was in as an eligible tight end on a 3rd and 1. You burned a timeout before you were incomplete on a 3rd down. Tigers would settle for a short field goal as well to go up 10-0. And this was an important part of the game. After LSU goes up 10-0 on first down, Tigers force a fumble. Greg Penn recovers it. And it was so important there that following that turnover, you got points. And the Tigers did. That was disappointing because you took over at the Arkansas 38, another false start by your center, and you end up with a 3rd and 15, and you settle for a 48-yard field goal to go up 13-0. But remember a week ago when LSU played Ole Miss, there was a point early in that game where Ole Miss intercepted a Garrett Nussmeier pass at the LSU 13-yard line. That was the drive where Ole Miss ended up going for it on a 4th and 1, and LSU stuffed them. All else equal, those 3 points could have been the difference in the game. You got to get points off of turnovers. I say it often, but the objective of the football game is to score points. It's not to win the stat sheet. It's not game control. It's not any of those fancy metrics. You got to score more points than the other person. So when you have an opportunity to score points, you do. And Damian Ramos deserves a tremendous amount of credit because they trotted him out there for a 33-yarder, a 48-yarder, a 33-yarder, and then in the second half, a 47-yarder, and he nailed them all. And none were even particularly close. He has been absolutely awesome for you since he won this job back in 2022 in Brian Kelly's first year, and he's been such a steady presence in special teams. And the reason it was so important for LSU to get points there is because Arkansas followed that with a touchdown, pulled within 13-7. And that meant because you got those points, even after Arkansas's touchdown, you were still up a touchdown. You kept Arkansas, key to this game until the point we're going to talk about it, you kept Arkansas at arm's length throughout. And I also would say this, just like a week ago against Ole Miss, after Ole Miss got up 10-0, after every time Ole Miss scored, LSU answered with points. Every time the rest of the game, if you don't realize that. Every time Ole Miss scored, the ensuing drive, LSU answered with points. They did it again tonight. So LSU goes up 13-0. Hogs would go score to bring it within 13-7. That was the busted play where it looked like Ashton Stamps thought maybe Taylor Green was going to run. He starts coming toward the quarterback. Jordan Gilbert wasn't able to get over in time to help. So they get the 25-yard score on a busted play. So it's 13-7. It was so imperative you get points here, especially because of what we always talk about, why you defer. It's the opportunity to go back-to-back points at the end of the first half, start of the second half. And Arkansas came close to doing that. But the Tigers would answer with a field goal of their own. Now, this was an interesting drive because you converted a 3rd and 4 with an 8-yard completion to Trey'Dez Green, who I thought played a really nice role. Trey'Dez had that conversion on 3rd down. He was targeted 3 times in the game. He also caught the 2-point conversion in the second half. One of the targets was a pass that was deflected at the line of scrimmage. So you kind of don't even count that one. But I thought Trey'Dez Green played a nice role for LSU. You overcame a false start on Will Campbell. You overcame a false start on Aaron Anderson on 2nd and 5 from inside the 20-yard line. But you end up settling for a 33-yard field goal. So you're up 16-7. And this is the point. 3:10 to go in the half. You're up 16-7. If Arkansas gets points at the end of the first half, they will have the opportunity to get the ball to start the second half and go take the lead. But the LSU defense stood tall. There was a holding call that wiped out a 12-yard reception, but this was also the drive where the Sage Ryan targeting was overturned. But LSU came up after Arkansas got to the LSU 49-yard line. So in LSU territory, there was the targeting play against Sage that was overturned, then back-to-back incompletions, and Arkansas would have to punt, and LSU would run out the half. And it was so imperative because Arkansas did get points to start the second half. They settled for a 51-yard field goal, but that made it 16-10, whereas if they had gotten points at the end of the first half, you maybe bring it to a field goal game, or they could potentially have had the lead at that moment. LSU consistently came up with plays. Now, after that 16-10 score, this was the game. This sequence was the entire game. LSU gets the ball at the 9:57 mark of the third quarter, and they put together a nice drive. They convert a 3rd and 6 on a pass to Kyron Lacey. CJ Daniels has the 29-yard reception just like that. Boom, they're at the Arkansas 35. Tigers are facing a 3rd and 9. They complete it to Mason Taylor for 19 yards. Awesome catch on the sideline, but there's holding on Emory Jones. So 3rd and 9, which would have been a conversion, now is 3rd and 29, and they get Kyron Lacey for offensive pass interference. And now all of a sudden it's 3rd and 34, and you punt. And this was so important because you have dominated the game at this point. LSU had controlled the entire flow of the football game. In the first half, LSU held the ball for 19 minutes and 12 seconds to 10:48 for Arkansas. You put up over 200 yards. You converted 4 out of 7 on 3rd down. They were just 2 out of 4. You were controlling the entire football game, but you were only up 6. And you're punting the ball to them with a chance to go take the lead late in the third quarter. So they take the ball. with 5:04 to play in the third quarter, and Whit Weeks called game. Rushes the passer, deflects the ball, intercepts it. He's down at the 2-yard line. One play later, Caden Durham would score. Trey'Dez Green would catch the 2-point conversion. LSU was up 24-10, and the game was over. Weeks would punctuate the next drive with a sack as well. Tigers would add a 47-yard field goal from Damian Ramos. And for good measure, the absolute icer was a 14-play, 80-yard drive that took 8:22 off the clock. And on that drive, my friend, 14 plays, 80 yards, 8:22 of the fourth quarter. An absolutely rip your soul out drive. LSU threw the ball twice. 3rd and 1, 3-yard completion to Mason Taylor. 3rd and 7. 10-yard completion to Aaron Anderson. By the way, very heady play because that ball might have hit the ground. They rushed up to the line, got a play off before they could review it. And that would be the game. There was a lot to like about what LSU did. Some not to like, which we'll also recap as we come back. And I have 2 gigantic takeaways from this game that I think will dramatically impact LSU as they move forward for the remainder of the season. We'll discuss that as we continue Locked On LSU, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn. Hey, look, if you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professional like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have time or resources to hire. It's where LinkedIn can help. They're constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I told you I had 2 big takeaways from this game. Number 1, LSU might have found its running game. We have been waiting all season for the LSU running game to emerge. And early in the year, Brian Kelly was quick to point out that they were facing stacked boxes. And if teams are bringing 7, 8, 9 bodies in the box, then why run against a loaded box? Wasn't just going to run just to show you could. They're going to give you that, and you got good receivers and a good quarterback, throw it. Point I made here was, for a decade, LSU fans criticized Les Miles for stubbornly running into stacked boxes because it was just what he was going to do and how they were going to do it. So I didn't blame Brian Kelly for the way that they approached the offense in the running game. And then there was a game like Ole Miss where they were just better. You saw fair boxes against Ole Miss. They only blitzed 34% of the snaps. So you had a fair box some 2 out of 3 snaps. You still didn't run the ball effectively because they beat you at the point of attack. They were better. And I fell into that trap early in the season. Veteran LSU offensive line, Will Campbell, before the USC game, saying, we're going there to get in a fist fight. We are going to run the ball. LSU didn't run the ball. Caden Durham had a great individual performance against South Carolina and had some really nice moments as well against South Alabama. But on the road against Arkansas and playing against the meat of the SEC schedule is very different. LSU went out there and ran the ball for 158 yards. I'm not telling you they're going to put that one in the record book or anything like that. But when I look at LSU and what they were able to do running the football, Caden Durham was a bell cow. 21 rushes for 101 yards and 3 touchdowns. Caleb Jackson finally got going. 5 rushes for 30 yards. He averaged 6 yards a carry. Josh Williams, 5 for 18. We even saw Xavion Thomas get involved in the running game with the carry. Garrett Nussmeier, even carry twice, one calling his own number on his own read around end. After his knee had been tweaked a little bit, I didn't love seeing that. I'm okay with him doing it if it's there, but not after your knee was tweaked when you're up 3 touchdowns late in the fourth quarter. But we've been waiting to see if LSU could establish a running game. They finally did it. Now, the test is much more significant next Saturday in College Station against that Texas A&M defensive front, Mike Elko. But for this veteran offensive line to get going, to complement the passing game, yes. And when you can go on a 14-play drive that eats up 8:22 off the clock and you only throw the ball twice, yes, you're running effectively, and that was fantastic to see. The other gigantic takeaway that I have is the defense. We all know and have talked about what LSU was defensively a year ago. They're the worst defense ever. And I could even go back to the USC game, and there were some things that I really liked, but there were clearly flaws as well. And I think my big takeaway from the defense early in the season was they were going to be a defense that just tried to create havoc. They didn't have the right people to be really good defensively, but they had the right people to be disruptive defensively. Even in that USC game, remember, they forced 3 fumbles in that game. They just didn't recover any of them. The ball just literally didn't bounce their way against USC. But a week ago against Ole Miss put up nearly 500 yards of offense in that game. But you got 6 sacks. You got 9 TFLs. You had 10 pass breakups. You had another half dozen quarterback hits. You had a couple of forced fumbles, a couple of picks. Well, all that havoc limited or ended Ole Miss possessions. What I think we're starting to see, though, is this defense actually find out what it is. And if we're being very honest, I think what LSU did against Southern Cal was say, we're going to go with what we feel like we know. Sage Ryan's played a bunch of corner, go play corner in this game. Even though that wasn't his best spot, go play corner in this game. At that point, you had Harold Perkins trying to move inside. You saw Jacobian Guillory on the defense as well at that point before he had suffered a season-ending injury. But you lost that game, and I think what they did was spend the next month playing everybody. We've talked about it specifically at safety, how they were rotating 6 guys in at safety. But really all across that defense, they used the next 4 games to figure out who could do what. They went into their open date before Ole Miss and said, okay, we feel like, let's look at the tape. We've played everybody over these last 4 weeks. Let's see who we can count on. They did. They settled on it, and they were good against Ole Miss, and they were even better against Arkansas. Whit Weeks is a star. Imagine not having him on the field, but for 30 snaps against Southern Cal. It's unfathomable. You're better at safety with Jordan Gilbert and Sage Ryan than you are with Sage Ryan at corner. You're better at corner with Zy Alexander back than you were week 1 when Zy Alexander wasn't playing yet. And I even look at Bo Davis and the job he's done at defensive tackle after Brian Kelly declaratively said they needed to go after defensive tackle help in the portal. They didn't get it. I mean, they got JVR Suggs and Gio Pius, but they were talking about going to get a Dominic Williams, a Simeon Barrow, and they missed on those guys. And then the best guy you had suffers a season-ending injury. And so now you're relying on a freshman in Ahmad Bro, a freshman in Dominic McKinley. You're expecting a guy like Paris Shand to play a dual role inside and out. And you just keep getting better. What an amazing testament to the coaching staff defensively, putting guys in the right spot and these coaches technically and functionally getting them better. I don't think it's a stretch to think they'll continue to get better, that they've far from played their best game of the season yet defensively. I think they will just continue to get better. And keep in mind, LSU has not allowed a touchdown in the last 6 quarters and an overtime period. Ole Miss didn't score a touchdown in the second half or overtime. Arkansas, forgive me, 1. I said it wrong. 1 touchdown in the last 6 periods and overtime. Arkansas scored the 1 touchdown on Saturday night. So in the last 6 quarters and the overtime period, LSU has allowed a total of 1 touchdown. That's not by accident. There are good players in that defense. They're figuring out who needs to play where. And as they continue to figure that out and get better and better, I think this defense can continue to get better and better. A couple of other notables from the game. How about CJ Daniels? CJ Daniels was LSU's leading receiver. Great to see him back. And now that he was gone and he's back, I think you can see it. He catches everything. He gets open. He catches everything. 7 for 86. Kyron Lacey 6 for 49 on the night. Aaron Anderson had 3 catches, 2 big catches on third downs that moved the sticks. Mason Taylor only had 2 for 16 on the ball game. He had 1 wiped out due to a holding penalty on Emory Jones, but Mason Taylor was all reliable. And Trey'Dez Green, the 1 catch for 8 yards, which converted a third down. He also had the reception on the 2-point conversion. So it was nice to see those guys kind of get going. And then defensively, we mentioned Caden Durham with his 100-yard night and his hat trick, his 3 rushing touchdowns. But defensively, Whit Weeks led the way again. 9 tackles, a sack, a TFL, an interception, a pass breakup, a quarterback hurry. He just stuffs the stat sheet. 40 is all over the field. And another commending night for Major Burns. 6 tackles. He continues to play very good football. Greg Penn had a forced fumble. You're getting it from so many places on this defense right now. That's fantastic to see. JVR Suggs came up with a third down sack on that first drive of the second half to force the field goal. You're just getting a great contribution from so many different players on the defense, and it was fantastic to see. And really, it was so nice to beat Arkansas and not have to sweat through a contentious, close ball game. LSU won up there in 2016, 38-10, and that's the last time it really was a breather before tonight. So for the Tigers to go win 34-10, give us a rocking chair evening was very good to see. I'll go back to that sequence though in the third quarter where Whit Weeks called game on the interception because Arkansas had the ball despite you controlling the game. Arkansas had the ball with a chance to maybe go take the lead, and in one play, Whit Weeks changed the game because that's what playmakers do. On the night as well, loved LSU controlling the line of scrimmage. LSU held the ball for 38-51. Arkansas just 21-09. Almost 39 minutes time of possession for LSU at Reynolds Razorback Stadium. On a night where they had the 4th largest crowd in the history of that program. They were sky high. You were coming off an emotional win. That's what good teams do. Doesn't matter where you play, who you play, when you play, or the circumstances. You're supposed to go beat the teams you do. You're supposed to, and LSU did. Now, what does this win mean for LSU moving forward? We'll wrap up with that next Locked On LSU, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Hey, if you want to be in that number when LSU goes to Kyle Field next week, Game Time's got your tickets. You want to be in Tiger Stadium when the Crimson Tide come in here next month, Game Time can help. All you got to do is download the Game Time app and look at all the amazing features that they have there. Game Time picks, love that. It's curation that makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. I also love the all-in pricing. Now, you have to turn that feature on when you toggle. It'll show you your total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. I love the panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, so you can see what it would look like from your view, from your seat. It's all there at Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem with the code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So LSU beats Arkansas. Alabama loses to Tennessee. Georgia hands Texas their first loss. What does it all mean? Well, remember, there are no divisions anymore in the Southeastern Conference. So the top 2 teams go to Atlanta for the SEC championship game. The top 2 teams in the regular season, no divisions. Well, forgive me, that was a yawn. It's 12:30 in the morning. I've had a long day. I'm recording this right now after I did postgame. What we got to remember is the top 2 teams go to Atlanta. And so what will be advantageous if to go there or to not? And we'll get into that a bit. But right now, Texas A&M at 4-0 in the league and LSU at 3-0 in the league are atop the SEC standings. They're the only two undefeated teams remaining in the Southeastern Conference. Georgia at 4-1, Tennessee at 3-1, Missouri, Texas, Vanderbilt all at 2-1, and then Alabama, Arkansas, Florida all at 2-2. South Carolina's at 2-3. Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Auburn, Mississippi State. That's the rest of your SEC standings as of right now. A couple of things. Remember, for LSU, one of the most significant things to remember is though LSU has a loss, it was a non-conference loss. I know you know that, but it's important to remember because it becomes inconsequential with respect to the SEC championship game. I don't want to say it this way because we all want to see LSU run the table, but you have a game to play with. You could lose a game among your last five, and the tiebreaker would have to fall your way, but chances are it would. Now, depending on who you lost to and all that sort of stuff, but there's a chance you could go 4-1 over your last five and still be in Atlanta for the SEC championship game. Now, the question is, do you want to be a 2-loss team going to Atlanta, or would you rather be a 2-loss team staying home? Here's what I mean. If you're a 2-loss team going to Atlanta and you win the SEC championship game, that's phenomenal because you're a top 4 seed with a bye. Remember, the top 4 conference champions all get a bye. So, and they're ranked one, they're seeded 1 through 4, and they all get a bye. So don't think of it in terms of what the playoff committee has 1 through 12. The top 4 conference champions are the top 4 seeds, and they all get a bye. So it doesn't matter if LSU, let's say, loses next week to Texas A&M, but ends up finishing 10-2, goes to Atlanta, wins. LSU is one of the top 4 seeds. Okay, so that's important. That's important to note. But the question is, what do you pull for in terms of let's say you drop a game and you finish 10-2. Do you want to be 10-2 going to Atlanta? Because if you win, great. But if you lose, that's a third loss. Does the committee keep you out altogether? And we don't know the answer to that because there's no precedent yet. It's the first year of the playoff. Could the SEC championship game loser be left out? Yeah, happened last year. Georgia was undefeated. They were number 1 in the country. They were the best team. They were the 2-time defending national champion. And they lost to Alabama in the SEC championship game. And that was enough for the committee to be cowards and leave them out altogether. So I wouldn't put anything past the committee. My thought is, if you're 11-1, great. Go to the SEC championship game. Take a free swing at Georgia, Texas, or whoever's sitting there waiting on you. But if you go 10-2 and you're 7-1 in the league and you lose a tiebreaker and you sit home, chances are your 10-2 is going to be good enough to get you in, even if you don't play in the SEC championship game. Getting ahead of ourselves a little bit here because there's still a long way to go. There's still 5 more games plus conference championship weekend plus another open date. So we're talking 7 more weeks before we know this. So much is going to be in flux. But what we know is an Alabama team with losses to Vanderbilt and Tennessee, very likely eliminated. Yes, they have the marquee win against Georgia, but I also don't think Alabama is done losing. I think LSU is going to beat Alabama in Tiger Stadium. Remember, Bama also has to play Missouri this coming week. Then they get the open day before they're at LSU. They play Mercer. They're at Oklahoma. Then they get the home game against Auburn. In theory, Missouri and LSU, toughest games remaining. Could they get past both of them? Maybe 10-2. Would they be in? Probably. But a lot of that is going to be up in the air because that's already a second conference loss, meaning Bama will not be in the SEC championship game in Atlanta. Man, there's so much to talk about, but the best thing from an LSU perspective is this. You're undefeated in conference play. You avoided a letdown. You're finding a running game. Your defense is hitting its stride. Everything is in front of you. There's things I can talk about for sure. Like DJ Chester had a really rough night. He had a false start, illegal snap, another false start. That was all in the first half. The second half, he did not have a false start in the snap, but 2 false starts and illegal snap all in the first half. There's a lot we could talk about. The penalties are a problem. But I'll also say that opening touchdown drive of the game, you didn't face a third down. You came out ready to roll. And in winning this game and winning it comfortably, you've announced yourself as a very legitimate playoff contender. And now you go to Kyle Field with a chance to take a commanding hold on your playoff destiny. We got all week to preview that game, but we'll celebrate this one a little more. Hopefully you'll be with us for our next episode of Locked on LSU. We'll hear from Brian Kelly, and that's when we also go through the Pro Football Focus grades for the game. So we'll go through what PFF graded for LSU against Arkansas. We'll look forward to that. Hey, if you're new, please subscribe up on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And thanks so much for making us your first listen every single day. Until next time, it is Locked on LSU, your team every day.